Hi, everyone.
Greetings.
We're doing the Pure Worship book. We're in chapter 21. The name of the city will be Jehovah is there. We're on page 221 at the subheading Jehovah is there. So we'll read the 3 paragraphs that are in this subheading.
And I'll be reading from the screen.
Right. And I'll be from the book. Jehovah is there. The name of the city is Jehovah is there. This name provides assurance that this is a city where the presence of Jehovah is felt. By showing Ezekiel this centrally located city, Jehovah, in effect, told the exiles, "I will be with you again." What an uplifting message. What lessons can we draw from this part of Ezekiel's prophecy? The name of this city-like administration assures us, as God's servants today, that Jehovah does dwell with his faithful servants on earth now and always will. This meaningful name also stresses a vital truth. The city exists not to give power to any men, but to implement Jehovah's loving and reasonable ways. For instance, Jehovah has not given the administration the authority to divide the land, so to speak, as mere humans may see fit. Instead, Jehovah expects the administrators to honor the allotments or privileges that he himself has given to his servants, including the lowly ones.
What is yet another remarkable feature of the city? Jehovah is there. While ancient cities had walls for protection with as few gates as possible, this city has 12 gates, according to Ezekiel 48. This large number of gates, 3 on each side of the square city, illustrates that the administrators of the city are approachable and available to all of God's servants. Further, the city's having 12 gates emphasizes that it is open to everyone. All the house of Israel is a direct quote from Ezekiel 45:6. The open character of the city serves as an important reminder to Christian overseers. Jehovah wants them to be approachable and to be readily available to all those living in the spiritual paradise. End of the section. Well, first of all, as a former elder back in the 1980s, I can say, well, some elders are approachable and some weren't and never learned how to be. This is all very wishful thinking. One could wish this was always the case with leaders, but that's all irrelevant to what the text is about. What is the text about? It's about 12 gates, 12 tribes of Israel, all the house of Israel, a city, a temple, and a land, and you wouldn't know that if you just read this interpretation.
It's not illustrating or emphasizing anything, it's just telling you.
This is what things mean. They keep using those loaded phrases like "so to speak," and what's this one?
Illustrates and emphasizes.
And what's that phrase up there somewhere? City-like.
Yeah.
Yep.
City-like administration.
A city-like administration.
City.
It's a city.
Yeah, and it's even in the first paragraph. Jehovah being felt. Well, it doesn't say that either.
Let's read that sentence again, so you take this for what it's worth. This name provides assurance, the name being, of course, Jehovah is there. This name provides assurance that this is a city where the presence of Jehovah is felt. That's not the message of Ezekiel. It's not the message of the prophets at all. The idea of this city, which is in the future, not now, already being experienced, is Jehovah's not going to be felt there. He's going to be there.
Yeah,
that's what it says.
They end with quoting, "I will be with you again." Well, that means he wasn't with them. And then in the next paragraph, they say that Jehovah is dwelling with you now. Well, I don't even think they know what the word dwell means.
What does it mean? How about living in actuality, that is, living literally among people?
Yeah.
And that's what it meant to the prophets.
And actually, when we were reading it, the immediate thought I had was Revelation 21. which I used to use in field service all the time. And then when I started reading the Bible and just taking it for what it said, suddenly that one was a problem for me as a Jehovah's Witness, because it says that God would dwell with them.
God wants to dwell among us. Is it possible
Yeah.
for him to do so? And the Old Testament says a plain yes.
Yeah.
But you are denying that all the way along the line here.
Yeah.
Let's not forget the backdrop to what Ezekiel is saying in 43. We'll get to that in a minute. We'll read the text. But in 43, you have the Shekinah glory returning to the temple, this future temple that's being described. But the backdrop of that is Isaiah, and it is Abraham's relationship with Yahweh. Yahweh was there. Yahweh appeared to Abraham. The backdrop of that, of course, is Adam and Eve walking in the garden where Jehovah is also walking in the garden. So they were already used to the idea. No, God will, not just will, but wants to walk among us, literally. And of course, that's the unanimous teaching of the prophets, that one day the Shekinah glory will appear again to our eyes and to our senses. The Shekinah glory will be there just like he was there in the burning bush and on the burning Sinai and in the Garden of Eden.
Yeah, so you don't have Moses just feeling like somebody's there. No, he sees something. And then he talks to what he thinks is somebody in the bush.
A person actually within the bush. Okay, so no, that's not the way Jehovah appeared to everybody, though. He appeared in human form over and over again.
With Abraham.
And this reference to his glory, which we'll get to now, because this sentence to me is insidious. There's a city where the presence of Jehovah is felt. Well, your ancestors, Jehovah's Witnesses, have felt that Jehovah was present among them for now 6 generations.
Yeah.
You're the 6th generation who feel that Jehovah's among you, but he plainly hasn't been, because he's not revealing his wisdom by his Spirit to your leaders, who you implicitly trust. And yet here you're encouraged to listen to the wisdom and the interpretations of your leaders again.
They say now and always will be. So really you have no prospect of anything better in the paradise earth
than an invisible presence.
Yeah.
Trust us.
Yeah.
Okay, so we know that they've been teaching that consistently since at least the 1870s, that Jehovah is among us and believe us that it's real. Have you felt his presence? Well, I don't know what that means, really.
Yeah.
Let's deal with the text, though, because Ezekiel is just one in a chain of the prophets about teaching about what that kingdom will be like when Jehovah is actually there. I'm thinking of Isaiah 33. I know it's mangled it in your version of Isaiah 33, verse 17 specifically. It says, "Your eyes will behold the king, a king," that you have in the New
I have
a king in his beauty. But if you read the context, you know the beautiful king that's being described here, that your eyes will see, is Yahweh himself. Just read 33 and read around it. A more familiar text just before that would be 32. "Behold, a king will reign in righteousness, and princes will rule in justice." Well, you believe, if you're a Jehovah's Witness, that king must be Messiah, but you don't believe he's going to be literally there. But the text in Isaiah is consistent, that no, he will be there, just as he was there in the original temple. I'm thinking specifically now of a very plain statement in so-called second Isaiah, which is in chapter 40, verse 5. And I know in the New World Translation they haven't managed to mess this up.
Okay.
So if you could read verse 5, also verses 10 and 11.
5 says, "The glory of Jehovah will be revealed, and all flesh will see it together. For the mouth of Jehovah has spoken."
Could Jehovah say anything clearer than that?
Yeah, they'll see it.
He's
all flesh will
basically
see it.
swearing by himself that not just good people will see him, literally see him one day, but all flesh will see him.
Yeah, and revealed. What does that mean if it's not seeing something? 10 and 11 says, Look, the sovereign Lord Jehovah will come with power, and his arm will rule for him. Look, his reward is with him, and the wage he pays is before him. Like a shepherd, he will care for his flock. With his arm he will gather together the lambs, and in his bosom he will carry them. He will gently lead those nursing their young.
At the end of this video, we're going to link to a video we've already done in the same series, the Pure Worship book, dealing with 34. That is Ezekiel 34, where it plainly says Jehovah's solution to bad shepherds, and of course we know that we serve bad shepherds ourselves. Jehovah's solution to bad shepherds is not just reappoint, or rather replace them with some new appointed shepherds. His solution in Ezekiel is to come himself and do it. Plainly says he will do that here. He will lead them. His arm will carry them. Well, if you have Jehovah doing that and promising to do that, then you don't need a governing body, and you don't need a millennium of a mediator on earth to interpret God for you, which is what you think you have ahead. We wanted to read Ezekiel 43 too.
Okay.
Where you have it explicitly said by Ezekiel himself what will be the reality for those who live in this renovated land, in this restored kingdom, in the city of Jerusalem. What will they experience? I'm thinking of Ezekiel 43, the return of the Shekinah glory.
4 to 7, I think you said.
4 to 7, yeah.
Okay. Then the glory of Jehovah entered the temple through the gate facing the east. A spirit then raised me up and brought me into the inner courtyard, and I saw that the temple had become full of the glory of Jehovah. Then I heard someone speaking to me out of the temple, and the man came and stood beside me. And he said to me, Son of man, this is the place of my throne, and the place for the soles of my feet, where I will dwell among the people of Israel forever.
Could it be any clearer what his intention is and why this is different? You have it in your paragraphs here that it's more of the same, apparently forever.
Yeah, I mean, he says, I saw this. I saw the temple full of the glory of Jehovah. And then he says, who's the one speaking to him says, this is the place of my throne. Well, it's a place, a temple.
That's what a temple is, by the way, in an ancient world. It's the place where God dwells.
And the place for the soles of my feet. That makes me think of Zechariah 14, eh?
Yeah, where his feet land upon the Mount of Olives. But this is very explicit that he desires to live among Israel forever. And Isaiah is even more explicit. And this idea, though, is there if you just read the histories of Israel, isn't it? Like First Kings and Samuel, where you have the story of the planning of the temple in Samuel and then the building of it. And what's the capper? The capper is that all of Israel at the same time see the Shekinah glory enter into that place, fill it so that the priests can't even function there anymore. So they expected a literal return of that circumstance when they clean themselves up of idolatry, and that's exactly what Ezekiel says will happen. What was our link?
We're linking to the video that we did on chapter 34. It's called I myself will search for my sheep.
Yeah, I think we actually counted in that chapter the number of I wills. That is, God in saying what his solution is to bad shepherding is he himself taking over the job. And that's exactly what Messiah was,
and
Jehovah himself.
That's the future promise, is that one day, God will be here ruling the whole earth,
personally,
but from Jerusalem.
Yeah. See you next time.